What's up? What's up? What is up? It's another Friday, an opportunity to get together and record what is known as the Ball Hog Sports Talk. We are in the building. As you see, it's not all three of us. The whole crew is not here, but physically, the whole crew is here in spirit. But the man Big Flow Show is traveling for work, so it'll just be the two of us, myself and ETP. But I promise you, it's going to be the same rough, rugged, and raw riveting content that is always the Ball Hog Sports Talk. If you have never been a part of our show, we start with our titles that we put a lot into. And today's episode is going by the title Black Friday the 13th. We know that Black Friday is known of as a November thing, but this particular week started off with Black Monday in the NFL. It has been known as such for a while. It's the Monday after the last game of the season when a lot of NFL coaches meet their demise and get fired, and they have referred to it as Black Monday. Today happens to be Friday the 13th. So this week, we put them together, and it's Black Friday the 13th. I promise you do not want to miss it. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of stuff, but the NFL is going to be front and center with some of the issues that they have with leadership, some of the issues that they have with the Rooney Rule, some of the issues that they have trying to get out of its own way. The NFL will be front and center. Has some other topics. NCAA final college football playoffs final game was played, and it seemed like one team showed up in the game, the other didn't. So we'll talk about that and much more. So make sure that you fasten your seatbelts. Make sure that you have your coffee ready. Make sure that you're tuned in because we are coming to you, and it's the Ball Hog Sports Talk where sports, business, and entertainment collide. We're going to do it rough, rugged, and raw. And with that, let's go.
Wake up, wake up, wake up, and stay woke. Because this is the Ball Hog Sports Talk with your boy, B. Brown, ESQ, a.k.a. the Ball Hog, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South. This is the place where sports, business, and entertainment collide. And we're going to give it to you rough, rugged, and raw. So come get you a spoonful, like some grits with butter and salt. You know how we do it in the South, y'all. Make sure you do not get caught in your feelings. Strap on your seatbelt and enjoy the ride. Come on, let's go.
In the building once again. You know how it is. Back like we never even left up in this thing. We don't have the Middle Coast represented because he is traveling out and about. But we do have from the East Coast, my man, the myth, the legend as well. Thou who is known as Mr. Beantown and supporting everything coming out of Boston. He is Ellis, the producer, ETP. What's up, my brother?
Good morning. I'm feeling pretty lucky today. I'm trying to exercise these demons. It's Friday the 13th, but I'm gonna say it's a lucky day, not an unlucky day.
Yeah, we're gonna hop into some of that, man. Luck is what you make it. There's a whole bunch of sayings about luck, and we're gonna get into some of those because it tees us up perfectly for the show. Is there any message that you'd like to give on behalf of the Big Flow Show? Since he's not here, but he's here in spirit. I'm assuming he's gonna give you something to say that would represent him. What would it be, ETP, as you represent the Big Flow Show?
I think he would want us all to go out and buy some lottery tickets. I think the Mega Millions or Powerball is about $1.4 billion at this point. So
1.4 billion.
My superstition is whenever you're out of town, out of state, you buy some lottery tickets. He's traveling. Hopefully he got some for all of us and he shares if he hits it.
Yeah, if he hits it, that last part, hopefully he shares because that's something people normally forget you when they finally do hit it, the lottery. But we gonna hop right in because you touched on something about luck when it comes to Black Friday, the 13th. Black Monday is thought of as a very unlucky day for some people. They get their call in the NFL, and when I say get their call, that means that they get the tap on the shoulder by the Grim Reaper and says, hey, the GM, the owner says, bring your playbook. The equivalent of when the players get the call from the player personnel person. On Black Monday, the coaches get the call from the higher beings, the executives. And so this Monday, there were some calls that were made, and one stood out in particular to me, Lovie Smith. And so we're going to talk about that. But also when it comes to Friday the 13th, we've known that it's been considered an unlucky day for a long time. There were some other things when it came to luck. I think TCU met a very unlucky fate when they had to play Georgia. And we're going to hop in and talk about that as well. But when it comes to that Black Monday, and the irony of it being called Black Monday, with the black eye that the NFL has and its inability to hire, retain, promote, mentor young Black coaches, the irony that it's called Black Monday is too rich to not mention. The sayings about luck, the harder I work, the luckier I get, you would think. And you have now, in just as many years, a coach that was brought in to fix a mess that was quite a mess there in Houston with the Texans organization. And just like the previous coach, which we knew was sort of a stopgap provision to sort of steady things as they were pretty rocky after the Deshaun Watson situation. But now Lovie Smith, who's more of a veteran coach and who was handed a roster that I don't know how many people could win with. Lovie Smith is now also the second casualty in as many years. Black head coach brought in to do something that was an insurmountable task by any account. And so today we choose to call this episode Black Friday the 13th. A good place to start because both of us have had success in corporate America. Both of us have had success in entrepreneurial endeavors and had success in our family lives. And, you know, we both live by this notion, and I know you well enough to make the statement that we, you know, again, going off of the different sayings when it comes to luck, right? You know, we've heard the saying, you make your own luck, right? Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. All of these beautiful sayings we have in sports, but it seems as though what we saw in Texas with the Texans in 2 consecutive years, on Black Monday, these Black coaches have the utmost bad luck when it comes to retaining their jobs. And I understood the first year, and it was rolled out as just, we need someone to come in and be almost a manager of the emotions that are within the building. But Lovie Smith, now being the second coach, met with the same fate after 1 year. I don't know what other way to say it, but it just seems as though on Black Monday, that brother shouldn't have gotten that call after 1 year. What say you? And we'll talk about his last decision in his last moment as a head coach, what I'm assuming he already knew was going to be the fate of Black Monday. But before we do, just the optics of it, right? And I know Brian Flores is being interviewed at different positions now, and that lawsuit has faded to the back in terms of the headlines. But what say you when it comes to Lovie Smith, man, and how this looks, the optics of it for the NFL?
Yeah, I think it's just always interesting how inconsistent the NFL is from organization to organization in terms of how they treat and respect and, you know, value longevity in terms of, and consistency in terms of coaching, right? Like you have right. Mike Tomlin, you know, he's been the coach, I think 16 years, has not had they call a non-winning season, has had no non-winning season. So he's always been 500 or better. Right. But, you know, the Pittsburgh Steelers has had 4 or 5 coaches in the history of the organization. But yes, this situation is obviously very different. You know, the way that they were dealing with, you know, every year there's always controversy, and it kind of ebbs and flows in terms of Black coaches and what the representation is in the NFL. Right. But then obviously Houston was dealing with all of the backlash and the negative publicity of Deshaun Watson. So they brought in a Black coach, they fired a Black coach. And at that point, it seemed like they didn't want any more attention brought to them in a negative light, so they hired another black coach. But I say all that to say it's always crazy in terms of how inconsistent it is. Lovie Smith went to the Super Bowl. Like he coached the Super Bowl. There's not, there's not a lot of people still alive right now that coached in a Super Bowl, even if you lost. Like the numbers are, it's rare air to
Right.
even
And
coach
in that
in a
particular Super Bowl, there were 2 black coaches, right? The
Two
irony
black
of that.
coaches.
Right.
And then you can get to a situation where basically you were just set up to fail and you're going to get fired after 1 year. But it always surprises me, or it doesn't surprise me, but it's really interesting, the inconsistency. And also it's, for some coaches, it's what have you done for me lately, or what have you done for me right now? And if you're not doing anything special, then you have to go immediately. Other coaches, get the nod. Like, I mean, I don't know how much we're going to talk about it, but Indianapolis very possibly could bring Jeff Saturday back. Right? Not that he necessarily deserves it or earned the position.
Oh, they're not really thinking about that, are they?
I mean, they thought about bringing him in, so I would imagine they're thinking about keeping him.
I hope not. I honestly hope not. But you talk about the inconsistency, and while it's impossible to really look in someone's heart and understand whether or not they have issues, real race issues, we can't do that. They haven't created a device that determines your, level of racism. So we can only make statements based on people's behaviors. And we can read between the lines when it comes to certain behaviors. But when it comes to NFL, yes, they're different organizations. But if you try to contrast Lovie Smith in 1 year with that roster, you contrast that with Sean McVay, who, yes, Sean McVay did win a Super Bowl last year with a loaded roster. You cannot win a dogfight without dogs. He had dogs last year on that roster.
All of them.
All of them, right? A loaded roster. But you contrast the Lovie Smith situation with Sean McVay, who is literally going to decide if and how he leaves. And they can't be any more polar opposites in terms of how you treat coaches. And Lovie Smith, I think, deserves respect, right? Because he has at least coached in a Super Bowl, and he did come and try to right the ship there. But to know that he was fired on Black Monday, and his parting shot was he went for 2 to win the game and won the game. So even as a coach, right, there's certain things that you look for in a coach. He could have been strategic and tried to lose that game and might have preserved their number 1 pick, being the Texans' number 1 pick. For those of you who didn't follow it, the story goes is that if the Texans lose their last game, then they solidify the number 1 pick. Unlike the NBA, there's no lottery. It's all based on your record, and it is in reverse order. The worst team gets the first pick. So if the Houston Texans lose that game, they have the number 1 pick in this year's NFL draft. And Lovie Smith does what I think is brilliant, one way or the other. If you say it was a strategic move to give 2 special fingers, both of them being on opposite hands in the middle of your fingers, if you say it was to give those 2 special fingers to the Houston Texans organization, knowing that his fate had already been sealed, I say bravo. If you say it's just that coaches are going to do what coaches do and they are wired to win, I say bravo. But either way, they win the game. They go for 2 and they get it. They win the game, and Lovie Smith is fired. I don't understand what the Texans are doing. Maybe it's not meant for me to understand, but it does seem from an optic standpoint that the NFL has just a big problem on his hand, and they keep digging a hole deeper and deeper and deeper, because on this particular week, on Black Monday, there's a man that literally had 1 year with that roster, and he was on the heels of another black coach that had 1 year with a bad roster. It just seems to be a little, I don't know, man.
Do you think that, I guess my question, because ultimately, obviously there's tanking scandals and all of this stuff that's come up in conversations that are happening behind closed doors. But I guess my question that is worth presenting is like, are those two things correlated? Like, because he won the game, because he did an effective job as a coach in the last game of the season, given the consequences, is that what cost him his job? Like, if they had lost the game, would he have kept his job? Like, I mean, that's the speculation. Because for me, I'm like, all right, even if somebody says this is your last game, like, all right, I'm motivated to win. I'm motivated every week to win.
Absolutely.
As a coach. I'm competitive. But if I know beforehand that this is going to be my last game as a head coach, I'm going out and I'm trying to win. And I actually am even less inhibited, right? I'm going for 2 points rather than taking it to overtime. Like, I'm doing all of these different things because this is my last game. I have nothing to lose. I have nothing more to lose, right?
If that's the case, if indeed, what's up, my man, Chufu Jordan? Appreciate you, man. And like we ask every week, humbly, please like, comment, share, tag a friend, tag a foe, tag anybody that you know. And please subscribe to both the YouTube channel and the podcast. We appreciate your comments, so keep them coming. But one of the live audience members, my man, Shel Jordan, who's is an avid viewer, and we appreciate it, very loyal. So we appreciate you, my brother. He says they fired him because he cost them the #1 pick. And if that's the case, I feel like the NFL has no other recourse but to launch an all-out investigation. If that's the case, if Lovie Smith keeps his job by losing that game, then there's no longer the need to add allegedly to tanking scandals, because that means that man faced a consequence of not winning the game, which is its own form of encouraging tanking. And from the competitive committee, right, the NFL has this whole thing about competition and the purity of the game, especially when you look at what sports betting is doing and going full-fledged and being online and legal in so many states. You got to get a hold on the competitive sanctity of the game. And if that's the case, I don't know which one I have more of a problem with. If you fire him because he won the game, or you fired him before the game, I don't know which one I have more of a problem with. I think on both ends of it, it just doesn't seem like it makes sense to bring in a coach to the season that is more of a veteran coach for 1 year with that roster. Now, if you say, Lovie knew all along it was a 1-year deal, then okay, but it didn't seem as though that was what Lovie was signing on to. And if Lovie was told before the game, this is your last game, you better believe he's going to try to win the game, because with the history that the NFL has among its teams, the history of hiring black coaches, you better believe Lovie Smith that's an interview. I'm in a head coaching seat. I've got an opportunity to win a game. I've got an opportunity to show all the other teams, 31 other teams, my competitiveness and my desire to win. I'm going to do that. I'm going to show people that I'm a winner. And as a person who will be vying for a new position, that's what you want to do. You want to show other organizations that you are wired to win. And it's tough to win with the roster that they had. But it is.
But I mean, even the whole just the argument that he should have lost the game for any reason is just ridiculous, because there's human beings that play. Like, the idea is everybody, as we talked about last week and with the DeMar Hamlin situation, like, most of these guys are not on guaranteed contracts. So the idea that you're always auditioning, you're always trying to perform at the highest level. So the point is, the idea of them trying to like intentionally lose the game has more effects than just a draft pick, right? Because at the end of it all, there's game film, there's players being evaluated, there's all of these pieces that are moving around, that if you're a professional and anybody gives you any inclination that you should be, reserving your energy, or you should be limiting your capabilities for the sake of some organization that may cut you may fire you after the game.
And use the same film of you dropping the pass, or mysteriously fumbling the ball away or missing the kick. They'll use that same film as the rationale behind why you're out the league.
Exactly. And that's the piece. So my whole thing is I going for 2, like I'm just like the season's over, right? Why go to overtime? Like let's just get this over with one way or the other.
Right.
So from the going for 2 piece, it's just like this is relatively a meaningless game. The outcome of this game. So why are we gonna like? Why make you work overtime if we're not gonna produce more product, right? Like let's
Fair.
let's get paid
Fair.
more per hour. Like let's
Fair.
keep our wage at a higher level.
ETP, I think I lost you on the sound, ETP. But I would agree with you wholeheartedly in terms of where they were in the season, where they were in the game, where they were going forward, and where Lovey was personally as a coach and what was on the line for him. It made the utmost sense to just try to win the game. And, I maybe I'm old school. And I'll take the maybe out. I am old school when it comes to that. If I have an opportunity to win, if you ask me right now, right, if we walk into a car and you say, I race you to the car, I'm going to try to win. If we playing spades, I'm going to try to win. I played Monopoly against my son about 2 years ago when he was only 8, the youngest one. And when he became bankrupt in Monopoly, I felt good about that. You could call me whatever you want to call me, but competition means you got to compete. If I have an opportunity to win a game and I have been working on a 2-point conversion, that's the point. That's the point that I wish was made more. When we think of some of these networks that talked about what Lovie Smith did, like Lovie Smith made sure that they had a 2-point conversion play ready. Lovie Smith made sure that he had the resolve and the wherewithal in that moment to call it. Lovie Smith made sure that his coaching staff understood that, in certain decisions, when certain inflection points happen, I'm the one who makes the call. So from a leadership standpoint, from a competitive standpoint, from an execution standpoint, to me, he gets an A+, yet he got fired on the next day, and people are connecting it to his decision to go win a game. It just seems like bizarre in a world that the NFL is under a lot of scrutiny when it comes to teams encouraging coaches to tank, because you can't do it for the reason that you pointed out, ETP, is that players' jobs are dependent on these opportunities. But the other reason you can't do it, and it's the elephant in the room, ETP having a little bit of technical difficulties. He'll be back with us in a second. But the elephant in the room is the other reason you can't do it is because of gambling. There are people that are putting their hard-earned money legally on these games, and the outcomes dictate whether or not they win or lose those bets. I'm not encouraging anybody to go bet their money, but at the same time, because the laws say in certain states that you're allowed to do it, they ain't doing nothing wrong. They're not doing anything illegal. They're not doing anything impermissible. So in that case, you got to protect the sanctity and the purity of the game when it comes to winning. And that's the biggest thing when I look at all of these Texans fans that talk about Lovey and his last dance there in Houston. He couldn't even get it right by doing it wrong. What are we doing? Or the Bears fans. And that's the part that probably hurts me most about the Big Flow show not being here today, because I wanted to take him to task when it came to these Bears fans celebrating that Lovey did this for them. One for the Gipper. Lovey decided to go win a game because he wanted to help the team that fired him before. They talking about putting a statue in the front of Soldier Field on behalf of Lovey's sacrifice. It just seems asinine that is what it's becoming. And the NFL in this week, right, where we started off with Black Monday, on the heels of Brian Flores and others exposing some of the tanking allegations that have been hurled against the NFL, the NFL has a big problem on its hand. And I think Lovie Smith is sort of the telltale sign of where we are when it comes to the NFL. Now, I'm a consumer. I watch games. I love the NFL still when it comes to consumption. But I also am wise enough to see that they have a problem looming. And, the Texans being the team that now in 2 consecutive years brings in a black man in a situation where there aren't a lot of black coaches in the NFL and give that particular coach, in both cases, both veteran coaches, give that coach a total a total chance of zero to really succeed in the role that they were in. It seems crazy because both hires qualify as diverse hires under the Rooney Rule. The rule that, like ETP pointed out, named after the ownership of the Pittsburgh Steelers, that they don't go through coaches like underwear. They do at the current time, and luckily, because the Steelers fans were calling for his head too, they do have the only coach that has never had a losing season in 16 iterations. He's never had a losing season. Now, it was my Cleveland Browns that secured that for this year. I'm not happy about that. But the silver lining in that loss, when my Browns yet again went out and looked pretty bad on the last week of the season, the silver lining was Mike Tomlin preserved that streak. I'm happy for that, brother. But in this episode of Black Friday the 13th, and we talk about luck, luck also requires the opportunity. And that's where I'm struggling to understand where the NFL is with the Rooney Rule and why the opportunities seem to be a farce at best. ETP, you back with us, audio?
Yes, it's I guess it is Friday the 13th. We're having
But other way, it had to be something that went on Friday the 13th, but we outlasted it. But look, that's just sort of my parting shots when it comes to the Lovie Smith firing. The Texans continue to create head scratching moves. I thought that after David Culley, Lovie Smith would get a real opportunity, and maybe I'm the dummy. Maybe I'm the fool for continuing to believe that at some point the NFL is going to get it right and get it out of its own way, and that owners are going to do right by people that have devoted a lot to this game. Lovie Smith, I think, he deserved more. He deserved more. He deserved a real opportunity at least, and I don't think he got that. And the NFL is move on, business as usual, but it's tough to continue defending the NFL. As a consumer, as someone that has benefited from the NFL, someone that likes to cover the NFL, it's tough to continue defending the NFL when things like this seem to occur with no recourse whatsoever. I'll give you last word on it before we move on.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty simple. I think it's just really hard to wrap your head around it in terms of how they decide who they do and don't. But at the same time, I mean it's reflective of all industries, right? It all just kind of comes down to relationships and how you manage them and how you maintain the politics and all of the other elements of navigating a career. So unfortunately, we see it play out in public, and there's all these other dynamics that are being included and investigated that I think that's the hard part, right? Even like Brian Flores and all these other pieces, like the fact that it plays out in public and there's race is obviously part of the conversation and all of these other elements. It's just,
and there were people there are people this week. My man Jay Crit, thank you for he's someone else who follows us loyally. I mean, we really appreciate your support, my brother. But Jay Crit says, Jay Crit being a Bears fan, teases me, says, yeah, they're absolutely going to give him a statue. But at this rate, that's the only way a black man going to get a statue in front of a freaking stadium as a coach, right? Is that he had to tank so another organization, or in this case, he didn't tank, so another organization gets the first pick. But, it's tough that in this same week, there will be people that I think are well-intentioned, that I think are pure-hearted, but I have to say are just pure idiots when they try to convince me that race had nothing to do with this. In the same week that you say Jeff Saturday, who shouldn't have been coaching on Friday or Saturday, was coaching on Sunday with no resume whatsoever, would even be considered a real candidate to continue in this role. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? And then we talk about the Rooney Rule. We talk about and the Cardinals because that role was vacated in Black Monday on Black Monday. Cliff Kingsbury no longer the coach. The Cardinals have shown, as of today, has been reported, have shown interest or asked for permission to interview Brian Flores. But even when it comes to those announcements and proclamations that certain Black coaches, we are asking for permission to interview Brian Flores. How do you not look at that with a side eye? How do you not look at it as that, man? They're doing something just to be doing it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing. It has become performative. Everything, like every time there's some intent to improve or create more inclusiveness and even the quote unquote playing field, it becomes performative. Like this is all performative, and ultimately, like I said, it's the ability, regardless of race. Obviously, race is a big part of the conversation, but like regardless of the race, the key piece is how do you navigate the politics and the bureaucracy and the culture of the NFL in order to be positioned and appointed to a coaching position where you're in between the ability to manage a coaching staff, players, as well as up to the GM and to the ownership. So it's a cultural there are a lot of cultural needs there, which just happen to coincide with race, right? Like, so as somebody that comes from a culture that isn't aligned with the people that are generally GMs or the people that are generally owners or almost exclusively owners of organizations, you're at a disadvantage based on your race because race is tied to your culture, and being able to navigate between those two things isn't the easiest. It's not the easiest two roles to play, but and it's usually easier for a white person that played football than a Black person that did anything.
Fair. Look, that I'll leave that there, and people can do what they want with it, but it again, the conversations that I had with, I think, well-intentioned people that I consider friends that look at me perplexed that I would even put race into the conversation, just means that maybe the NFL is doing a better job than I think. They are selling people on this idea that your coaches really equal opportunity. No big deal, equal opportunity. And thank you. Another one of our live viewers says, Larry says, Lovey had a bad team playing hard. This is what a coach is supposed to do. Isn't it? Not just a bad team, a roster that by definition was in recovery, on life support, still reeling from all of the ramifications of Deshaun Watson, to be fair, but a roster that is at best horrible, and you give a man 1 year. Not just a man, a seasoned veteran coach that absolutely, you could tell, came to work every day with a level of professionalism and made sure that his players did the same thing. The roster was horrible, let's be honest.
And I mean, to the point where before Deshaun Watson went through everything that he had to go through, or everything that came his way, or he brought on himself, however you look at it. Point is, before any of that information became public about his legal situation, he didn't want to stay with the organization, right? So you're talking about an organization that the top player, the player that you should be catering to in some capacity to make sure that they're able to maximize their effectiveness and have the right team around them, he wanted out. So it was it's an organization and a franchise that just generally isn't conducive to, athletes playing and being happy in their environment, right? And so the idea that he's even able to take on this role and create some level of silver lining in the organization is a testament. Hopefully it results in him getting a head coaching job again, if that's what he wants. But the fact that he's, he was the coordinator before all this, and now, then appointed the head coach just as a part of deflection, It's unfortunate. It's
Yeah.
unfortunate the way that they use people as pawns and there's no real intention, but you still have to go out and try to win the game every single week, including week 18 when the draft, the first round draft or the first draft pick is on the line.
In the Doodle Bowl. That was a really bad game talent wise, but hey, man, we play to win the game. J. Chris said the Bears got real blackly black. I'll say this, man, as we move on, because it is in the same week that we talk about Lovie Smith. In the same week that, first of all, I can't believe we still refer to it as Black Monday. In this same week, we named this Black Friday the 13th, and we talk about luck. It just seems as though the air quote bad luck is trying to ascend the ranks as a black coach in a system that just has not historically to date. And I hope it'll change. I pray that it changes. I'm actually optimistic that at some point, goddamn it gotta change. But it just hasn't yet. But in that same week, you've got a Sean McVay basically, hey, man, I'll tell you guys what I want to do, when I want to do it, with the entire franchise waiting for him to have his epiphany moment. You got Sean Payton that wherever he goes, the 3 current vacancies have all expressed interest and asked for permission to talk to Sean Payton. They've got to go through the Saints because he's contractually connected to the Saints through next season. And maybe that's it. Maybe your name just has to be Sean in order to have the better opportunities in coaching. It ain't got nothing to do with black and white. Lovey should have named himself Sean. He should have changed his name at 18 and been Sean instead. But you can't piss on my leg and tell me it's raining. It's just, this week, especially when you look at that decision, the NFL still has a long way to go. Let's talk about some of these playoffs, man. And before we do that, let's make sure that we recognize and celebrate that Damar Hamlin got to go home. So we're celebrating. He got to go home. First, he went to Buffalo and was in care of the Buffalo health professionals. Now I think he's actually getting his care in his own residence. He's home. So, God does miracles, man. That young man was literally dead on that field, and the medical attention that he got brought him back. But for me, I'm going to go ahead and say the way my beliefs are set up, man, I believe that the miracle, we witnessed the miracle, so we're celebrating, man. God bless. Happy to hear the good news for Damar Hamlin. Let's hop into the playoffs. Go ahead.
I just want to, so it's interesting, right? Because I just want to mention one thing, because he's gotten, justifiably a lot of support and recognition, and it's great that he's not, hasn't dealt with any more adverse effects. We'll see how he recovers. But in the same time, I don't think the media has given enough attention. Not that I don't know that there should be enough attention, but it's just interesting that it's happening at the same time. But Peyton Hillis, retired NFL player, played for the Browns, played for the Giants, actually was in the ICU at the same time as Damar Hamlin because he dove into a pool to save his children from drowning and ended up in intensive care. Still in intensive care, but it sounds like he's recovering. But I wanted to call that out because, the amount of support and I guess, just outward showing of support to Damar Hamlin for playing a game and having
Right.
the risk and all of that. While you have another man who did the same exact thing in terms of put his life on the line to play football, but then also risked his life to save his children, isn't really getting, didn't get as much recognition. So I'm not saying that I know.
When you said it, it was the first time I even heard it. But the NFL,
Yeah.
Look, there is the PR machine that the NFL has behind them. Some of it is inherent in the networks that they spend, tons of money to have the NFL there as its product and feature it. But then there's also the actual PR that the NFL does, and rightfully so. Like most large multi-billion-dollar corporations, they press matters. But a lot was riding on DeMar Hamlin's story.
Right.
The truth of the matter is you bring up Payton Hillis, but on a daily basis, there are players fighting for their health and literally fighting for their lives because of the ill effects of the game that they played. There are
Sure.
guys that on a daily basis, and I talked about it, and we talked about guaranteed contracts in the NFL, fighting tooth and nail not to give players full disability benefits because of ultimately what it will cost them.
Right.
And it's a drop in the bucket in terms of what they make, but that's just how corporations are set up. We talk about it, just like it's set up to make sure that the bottom line is a certain way, and in that, the PR that goes along with that, the machine that tries to make sure that the narratives are all positive. A lot was riding on the DeMar Hamlin story. So
Absolutely.
I'm glad you brought up Payton Hillis, and shout out to him for going in and saving his kids, man. God bless.
Yeah, I mean, I think, absolutely it was a much bigger, corporate corporate crisis for the NFL with DeMar Hamlin outside of his, his life, or separate from his life for the NFL. But I just think it's just this interesting piece of how, and you can speak to it better, infinitely better than I can, but how it's presented as the NFL is a brotherhood and it's a fraternity and all of this. But then once you're out, the idea that the people, the alumni or the legends or people that have played having challenges to get disability or even be recognized. So I would just raise it as like an interesting contrast of that person is not really being treated publicly. Who knows what the behind the scenes piece of it is, but if you're not part of the machine as it's running,
Right.
how much are they going to value you, right? And so that, I think that piece of it is what makes it's more of a reminder. Like you said, there's countless people going through all of the adversity that they could be going through as a result of the game, or that they just didn't get the support after being a part of the game that they should get. And then this is a reminder, as we're dealing with in the same week, somebody in intensive care and all the stops are being pulled out, money's being raised, jerseys are being,
Right.
emblazoned, and all of these things to memorialize this moment. But then you got guys that are out of the league for whatever reason, dealing with their own situations and aren't necessarily getting that same level of recognition.
Yeah.
So
Reggie Farima, who I think is the Big Flow Show senior. I think that's the Reggie Farima, not the son who comes on the show all the time and does his thing. But I think the ultimate Reggie Farima says, and I agree. I think Hillis is out of sight, out of mind, and I would argue that most players are. Once you're done and your time in the sun has passed, you're out of sight, out of mind, and the NFL has to deal with that reality. And I would even argue I think it's overplayed. I said this last week. The brotherhood is overplayed. There are different, I don't want to call them cliques, but on any roster, you're gonna have one or two dudes like those are your dudes. But you guys are going to work. It's a job. It's a corporate setting. I'm going to work, then I'm done. And that's the harsh reality of it, because even if, let's just say, look, it was only prior to the tragedy that had occurred in that Monday Night Football game with DeMar Hamlin having his cardiac arrest moment. Prior to that, his Toys initiative had only raised $2,500. If I just took, because we want to talk about the brotherhood. If I just took the 53 men on his roster, so let's take him away, let's add him too, and they just gave $1,000, you're already at $50,000. $53,000 if everybody on the team just gave $1,000. These are men that are making a minimum of probably $650,000, $700,000. So if there's a brotherhood, then I think there are elements and cliques of brotherhood on every team, but the NFL is a business, man. It's just like you going to work. When you go to work today, if you don't feel everybody there is some, brother or sister of yours, and that's pretty similar to what the NFL is. But honestly, I don't mind when it comes to Peyton Hillis is the norm when it comes to the NFL, and it's unfortunate. It really is, because there's a lot of money there that could do a lot of good for a lot of causes. And more importantly, enough money there that some of the health concerns that players are having could be at least mitigated. Not completely alleviated, but definitely mitigated. So I say that before we hop on. Let's get quickly to the NFL playoffs, man, because the playoffs are coming this week. And the playoffs lineup is this. You got tomorrow, Saturday, the first game is the NFC game. You got the Seahawks at the 49ers. Geno Smith in that story is an amazing story. They were able to get in week 18, and they unfortunately on Black Friday the 13th, their bad luck is that they got to play the 49ers, who might be the hottest team in all of the NFL. 4:30 p.m. tomorrow, that game kicks off. And then the 8 p.m. game, 8:15 p.m. game tomorrow night is the Chargers at the Jaguars. The Jaguars are hosting a doggone NFL wild card game. That in itself is a story. 1 year removed for Urban Meyer, who, you know, after he had his Black Monday moment and got fired, miraculously he was on TV again 2 days later. But I digress. Who do you got winning those games? Who you guys got coming out? You guys know how we like to do it. Make your prognosis now. Say it now with your chest. Don't try to tell me later on who you knew was going to win. You got the Seahawks at the 49ers. Who do you think prevails in that one, ETP?
I really want Geno Smith to win a playoff game. I really want it to happen with the Seahawks, but I have to go with the 49ers, even though they have an inexperienced quarterback, but I think they're just too tough. Defense is too tough. Geno, I hope you can do it, but I'm going to go with the 49ers, unfortunately.
Yeah, Debo Samuels is back. Yeah, who's back? Debo is back. So and of course you got, Chris McCaffrey, who is he is who he is. And I think that the 49ers have a better roster. I think the 49ers hosting have been waiting for this moment to get back to the opportunity that they had last year. And everything within my bones tells me that the 49ers are going to win this game, which is why I'm picking the Seahawks. Geno Smith has done the unthinkable. The fact that Geno Smith was in a conversation for being the MVP of the league this year on this episode of Black Friday the 13th shows you that you create your own luck. Geno Smith has snatched victory out of the jaws of defeat when it came to his career. And we are going to see Geno Smith do the unthinkable. He's going to be in San Francisco. He is going to make the entire Bay Area, all the 49er fans from around the world, get ready to pull out your Kleenex and cry. Geno Smith does the unthinkable and marks the end of an amazing and unthinkable season, unfathomable season for him. I'm rooting for you, Geno Smith. Don't make me look bad now. Broward County, baby, Miramar. You know what I mean? Went to Miramar High School, actually, I think from North Miami, but close enough. We got the second game. We got Chargers at the Jaguars. Who do you got winning that one? Two young quarterbacks. It is the future of the NFL. Who you got winning that one?
I gotta go with. I'm going with it's the craziest thing that I've said in a while, but Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm gonna take them. Trevor Lawrence is a champion. I think he's back to where he's comfortable being. I don't know how many games he lost before becoming a professional football player, but I think it's in the single digits, if not less. So I just gotta. I mean, the pedigree. I put a lot of stock in Trevor Lawrence. I think once he's given the opportunity, things can get crazy. Chargers have historically been, no matter who's on the roster, never live up to the expectations. I don't think this will be any different. I think Jaguars got a lot to prove. I think Trevor Lawrence he's a champ. He's been a champ. He's like the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar record as a football player, but he hasn't seen the success on the NFL level, but he's built for it. So I'm going to go with Jacksonville.
Because it's Friday the 13th, man, I gotta go with the Chargers to be the second in just as many games. There's going to be 2 away teams that will prevail tomorrow. I'm going Justin Herbert, however you say his last name, Herbert.
That's how much confidence you have.
Yeah, I pronounce it differently every time. But I will say that the kid is, to me, like prototypical. I love the way he throws. I love the way he reads defenses. I love the way, if he needs to, he can create things outside the pocket. So and they are very similar to one another. He and Sunshine. But I'm going with the Chargers to upset the Jaguars at home, and both away teams win tomorrow. In my opinion, it is Black Friday, so crazy things have happened. Friday the 13th. So crazy things have happened. Let's go on Sunday. You got the Dolphins at the Bills, and then in the second game on Sunday, you got the Giants at the Vikings, and then the evening game, Ravens at the Bengals. We'll start first, Dolphins at the Bills. Who you got winning that one?
No Tua, no W, and the Bills are on track to get straight to the Super Bowl anyway. So obviously that's a no-brainer. Buffalo.
Yeah, I gotta go with you on that one.
24 points.
By 24 points. And please, in our audience, make sure that you weigh in. Who you got winning? We started on Saturday. Seahawks at 49ers. Who you got winning that one? We said then in the evening game on Saturday, it's the Chargers at the Jaguars. Who you got winning that one? And now we're into the Sunday games, and Dolphins at Bills. I got to go with you. I'm going with the Bills at home. The Bills just got everything going for them. Lamar Hamlin, the spirit being in the stadium. We saw what happened in the opening kickoff last week when they returned one for a touchdown after having spent years and seasons of not doing so. That says something special is going on with this team, and I think that whatever it is going to continue in that game against the Dolphins, like you said, without Tua and with a third string quarterback who while I would defend he should be on the roster, he should not be on the playoff game. The second game, you got the Giants. Yes, the New York Football Giants. And this is the part that I really hate that the Giants made the playoffs. I'll go ahead and say it. I'll be out there with it. I'm a hater because I live amongst all these Giants fans. And Giants fans and Knicks fans are just delusional. It's something about you New Yorkers, man. Y'all got something going on with you, man. I don't know what it is. It must be something in the water. I don't know what it is. It must be something in that water. But Giants fans really think that this is it. They think that they have finally figured it out. Although that they backed in and limped into the playoffs, they feel like just like they did the previous 2 iterations, although that was with Eli Manning, they figured out a way. And Giants fans honestly believe that they are going to figure out a way with Daniel Jones at quarterback. They feel like they have the right coaching staff in place. Giants fans, and I can attest because I've been hearing it every time I go to the doggone grocery store, every time I go to the barbershop, every time I go anywhere here in the northern New Jersey area. Giants fans tell me that they're going to figure it out and win this game on Sunday. What do you think? Do they go and upset the Minnesota Vikings, ETP?
I must. It's Friday. It's definitely Friday the 13th. Things are going crazy today. I really would never want to say this, but I'm gonna go with the New York Giants. As a Patriots fan by law, I'm just gonna have to. I mean, I live in Giants country. I don't know if it's just I'm starting to get conditioned to it, and I'm accepting it.
Drinking that water, man.
My neighbor's always trying to encourage it, but I don't know. It's less about me having confidence in the Giants, and it's more about me having doubt in the Vikings. They've shown a lot of weaknesses over the past few weeks, and again, it's the Minnesota Vikings. They always find a way to lose, even when they had some of the greatest offenses in the league. They couldn't pull it together. So I'm gonna go with the upset. I'm gonna go with the Giants.
I'm going with the home team there. I'm going with the Vikings. I think Minnesota figures it out because we all have been waiting on them to mess it up yet again. Eventually, like 2 negatives makes a positive and something. I don't know, some weird way the Vikings finally get it right. And I want to pick the Vikings because it's the purple and gold, baby. You know what I'm saying? The purple and gold, especially on this day, all that Coleman love. It is January 13th, J13. So shout out and happy Founders Day to the lovely divas of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. What's up to all the Reds out there? Happy Founders Day, J13. So yeah, I'm picking the Vikings because of the purple and gold. I'm picking them. I think they're going to win it. And I'm hoping they win it because I just can't hear the Giants fans talk about it. If they doggone win a playoff game, get out of here, man. The whole world is gonna be under fire because Giants fans gonna come out in droves if they mess around and win. So please, Vikings, please just play good football. That's what you're supposed to do when you got the roster that you have. The last game Sunday night will be the Ravens at the Bengals. No Lamar Jackson. And we'll talk about that after we pick the teams. No Lamar Jackson. They got to go to Cincinnati on the road. Cincinnati is upset. Cincinnati feels that though, while they prayed for DeMar Hamlin, Cincinnati feels as though Cincinnati is the one that got holes in all of this. That's an angry Bengals team that is hot. They have been playing amazing football over the last several weeks. Can the Ravens do the unthinkable? And with I think Huntley is going to be back. So they'll have their backup quarterback, not the third-string quarterback. Can the Ravens go to Cincinnati and beat the Bengals?
Even without Lamar Jackson, I mean, they have a great defense. This is all a competitive game. It's division rivals. It's probably one of the better rivalries, regular season rivalries in the league. So I think it'll be tight, but I think the Bengals are charged up. They've got a chip on their shoulder. They were in the Super Bowl. They made it last year. They're no stranger to it. So I think they're on a mission, and they're gonna take this one.
They're gonna win it. I'd have to agree with you on that. I just think that the Ravens have too much to overcome. I would have loved to see the real Ravens, if you will, with Lamar Jackson playing. But I just think that they have too much to overcome to win. So I gotta agree with you there. It's gonna be the Ravens win that one, and the Bengals win that one, and the Ravens wait until Lamar gets back. And then the drum roll, please, the finale of Monday Night Football. The finale of Monday Night Football, because I talked about the New York Football Giants and how annoying their fans can be, my neighbors. Shout out to y'all. But they they pale in comparison. They are just a 6.0 on the Richter scale compared to a 12 on the Richter scale when it comes to these Cowboy fans. The Dallas Cowboys got to go to Tampa Bay and play TB12. TB12, your guy, former Patriot, greatest of all time as a quarterback. Some argue greatest of all time as a football player. Some argue greatest of all time as an athlete, as a competitor. I don't care where you fall on that. You got to respect the man. TB12 has never lost to the Dallas Cowboys in his career. Will this be the time that TB12 takes a loss and maybe takes a walk into retirement and into the next phase of his life where Fox or somebody got a whole bunch of money waiting on him? But is this the time that the Cowboys finally slay the dragon and beat Tampa Bay, beat TB12 in Tampa Bay, and advance? Monday Night Football, the whole world is watching. The greatest of all times against the most annoying and, I got to admit, well-supported franchises of all time. Who wins?
So it's definitely the world is off its axis. So the predictable answer is obvious, right? So like the Cowboys, if they do everything that they always do, they're gonna fall apart and they're gonna exit out of the playoffs. Tom Brady's gonna exercise his heroics and take this team that's totally unsung all the way to the Super Bowl. But I'm gonna say because the Cowboy fans need some little piece of information that justifies their annoying fanaticism. That I'm going to say Dallas beats the GOAT, and this allows them to have all of their annoying, just like irrational optimism for the next decade by beating the greatest quarterback of all time and advancing to the second round and then getting destroyed by whoever they need to play. So I'm going to go with the Cowboys.
And you've now made me change mine because I can't stomach it. My big brother's a Cowboy fan, and he's brainwashed his kids. So my niece, my nephew, his wife is a Cowboy. Anybody that you know that is central to your life that is a Cowboy fan has driven you crazy. I'm going to look right in the camera in this. Any of us that have had to endure one of those soliloquies of a Cowboy fan in the middle of a Thanksgiving dinner, anyone that has had to deal with someone tell you those amazingly annoying words, how about them Cowboys? Anyone that's had to endure that, you got to be with me here. I am going to do the unthinkable because you know I am a TB12 hater. I am a self-proclaimed hater. I don't mess with Tom Brady like that. I respect him, but I don't vibe with Tom Brady like that. I just can't do it. You can't have the whole world, man. You got to have at least some haters. So I'm in that camp, you know. A man's a strikingly handsome guy with well, he did have a supermodel wife, past tense, with all types of money and opportunity, with all these Super Bowls. I'm a Tom Brady hater, but in this particular instance, I got to choose between my hate, and I hate the Cowboys more. TB12, I need you to go out there and get some of that good old mojo, some of that fountain of youth stuff that you had, some of the plays that you, and if you look at his completion percentages, he still is playing top tier football. It's just he's not surrounded by a lot. He doesn't have Gronkowski. Mike Evans is flip a coin. He is the greatest receiver in the NFL sometimes. The dude that shouldn't have been starting the next play. He's hit or miss. So I hope he can do it. He doesn't seem to have the tools to do it. I know I shouldn't be saying it, but I think somehow, some way, my man TB12, the one who I like to hate on, shuts all the haters up. Most importantly, he shuts all the Cowboys up, and the Cowboys go home yet again early in the playoffs. Dak Prescott is going to be playing against the greatest, and I think the ghost of the GOAT talk is going to be a black cloud, dare I say it, in Black Friday, the 13th episode. We're going to call it Black Cloud because, you know, everything has to be black when it's bad. It's a black cloud hanging over Dak Prescott. TB12 wins it. Tampa Bay advances, and the Cowboys fans are going to log off Facebook for at least a week. That's my prediction. Make sure that y'all give me your prediction, man. Those are the games. Those are NFL playoffs. Going to be some good matchups from Saturday all the way through Monday. That big, bad, powerful corporation known as the NFL will have a monopoly on viewership, and I'm sure that everyone will be watching and tuned in. So NFL, do right by those players. Do right by those players. Let's hop on, man, because the other big, bad business that seems to be ever growing is college football. And the college football playoffs ended with a finale between TCU, the Horned Frogs, and the now back-to-back champions, Georgia Bulldogs, and what was a landslide. What did we learn in that game? Because it seemed from the very beginning, other than one broken coverage play, it seemed as though it was very clear to anyone who was watching that the Horned Frogs were overmatched. Did we learn more about the Horned Frogs or Georgia when we saw what was a landslide of a victory and Georgia steamrolling over the Horned Frogs? And it looked like one of them science projects, which you used to do to frogs. Remember, that's old school. I'm assuming with the treatment of animals, they don't do that in science anymore. But back in my day, we used to cut a frog apart and do all kinds of things. That's how we learned about the anatomy of a frog, is in these science classes. That's what seemed to happen to the Horned Frogs on Monday night. And I want to know, what is the message that we get from that? Because as we contemplate expanding to 12 teams, there was a big debate about the semifinals showing that there's more parity in college football and how more teams need an opportunity. That theory was debunked on Monday night. If you're watching what was so one-sided, I don't know how you reconcile those two different theories in one, but in a span of 10 days, we got to see the most competitive semifinals that we had ever seen, with TCU winning in the nail biter over Michigan, and then Ohio State losing. Now Georgia winning. I'll say that. Georgia went out and figured out a way to winning over Ohio State in a nail biter. And then you fast forward, and then Monday happens, and what did we learn? What do we learn about college football when it comes to the finale?
I mean, we learned that being a 25-year-old quarterback in college football might be a little bit of an advantage. So what I learned was Stetson Bennett and Lamar Jackson are the same age, which is crazy. Is crazy. But I mean, what I will say is, if the Cowboys were playing the Georgia Bulldogs this week, I wouldn't pick the Cowboys. So I said last week, they might as well give Georgia the trophy now before they even played the game. I didn't know that TCU agreed with me and took my advice and just laid down and died. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy. So
maybe TCU, I think the TCU, some would argue, because I see my man Shelton Jordan says that the semis, and I agree with him. All right, from a business standpoint, the College Football Playoff Committee probably didn't want a rematch in the semifinals. I think that the way they seeded it was to prevent that from happening. And maybe TCU gets blown out in the semi if they play Georgia, and we've got Michigan and Michigan and Georgia, or Ohio State and Georgia in the championship. But I'm not certain that really does anything other than give us an extra game. It seemed as though Georgia was on its. Look, I thought TCU played a great game in the semifinals. Maybe what we learned was that they just don't have the depth. Like to use the term, they kind of shot their load, if you will, in the semifinals, and that's all that they had. They didn't have anything else. They didn't have another, another magical moment in them, because they don't have the depth and they don't have the level of talent that a team like Georgia has.
Yeah,
in the final game,
Georgia had been there. Like, TCU has never, like, they're showing up to the party for the first time against the team that just did it last year, right?
Right. The SEC, just like we hear the Cowboys, and I alluded to the Giants, the SEC has a lot of vocal supporters too. The SEC supporters have taken this moment to sort of pronounce their dominance and say this is affirmation that the SEC is its own class and everybody else is just struggling to stay afloat. And if you look at the SEC's record in bowl season, they did dominate. They dominated. SEC dominated. And if you didn't think of what's happening with the conference flight and people running to the SEC, you would only imagine that's going to become more dominant with the two teams that have said to be entering the SEC in a year or two. What does this mean? Right? What does this mean? Because I don't think from parity standpoint, I don't think from competitive standpoint, I don't think from a business standpoint, you want one conference to be so supreme to everyone else, because then it makes all of the postseason play and even the college football playoffs essentially meaningless. We know that Goliath is going to go and rain down on David. We know that. That means that I don't need to watch it. You saying that we could have crowned Georgia the championship in last week's show means that other people are thinking the same thing, and those people don't tune in. The one-sidedness of that game made it such that at halftime you could change the channel. And when it comes to viewership, when it comes to interest, when it comes to selling ads, that's the last thing that you want. You want people to stay dialed in, the viewership to stay at a certain level, so then the business element of it continues. And so I think the NCAA has a problem, if indeed I do agree with the annoying SEC fanatics, that they are head and shoulders above the rest. People said that this hypothetical question of what would happen if we put an NFL team against a very good college football team. There are people that said that we saw that play out in Monday's game. Essentially, Georgia is an NFL team, having lost, I think, and I might be wrong with the number, upwards of 10, shy of 15, maybe I don't know the number, but somewhere around 10, between 10 and 15 players to the NFL, yet they come out and dominate in that fashion, not just on Monday, but all season. They were pretty dominant. They had some more competitive games, the semifinal being one of them, but they didn't have a blemish. They had an undefeated season. So what does this mean for the SEC if indeed they are, reign supreme over everybody else? How does that impact the overall competitiveness of college football and the business of it?
Yeah, it's interesting because as you were talking, the reality is teams like TCU aren't going to get the benefit of the doubt of strength of schedule and all of these different things where, there's going to be doubt. The idea of putting a team into the playoff that this could happen to, especially with all the money on the line, especially with talking about the expansion of the playoff, especially just with the idea that the NCAA has a new commissioner or director, and then is college football going to be part of it? So all of these things that are moving around, it's almost, to your point, like it's just going to be the SEC playoff or SEC
because
versus
those six at large teams will basically be 2 through 6 of the SEC,
right,
or you've got your conference champions, and then it's basically another SEC, another stab at winning it from SEC teams if indeed this continues. Right. And I'm one of the people that argue that we embellish a bit when we talk about the overall quality of SEC teams. I'm one of those people that normally make that argument. I'm normally one of those people that say, look, you got the top 3, but after the top 3, there's a lot of vulnerable teams. The SEC, what I think has done over the years, and why people make the argument that, the SEC, what the SEC has done is it has captured a culture of college football, and they present amazing environments for games that normally create better games. They don't necessarily always have better talent. Mm-hmm. They do have better games because whether you're, and I'm going to go extreme here, whether you're Vanderbilt with a lot less talent on your team playing a Tennessee in a situation because it is an SEC environment, the game is better. But I'm one of those people that just thinks that talent is going to be spread across the country. That's just what it is. Moments like this, I don't have a leg to stand on. My argument seems a little hollow because Georgia was that dominant. The SEC was extremely dominant in bowl season. And I think college football has a problem if indeed my theory was wrong and the SEC enthusiasts and fanatics are right, because it leads to people tuning out.
Yeah. But even the talent piece, right? Like, we talk about Stetson Bennett, walk on and JUCO and then back to Georgia, like probably not going to be a high pick in the NFL draft, probably not going to have the greatest career in the NFL if he even, is able to string something together based on his stature and all of that. But yet within this organization, within this team, they're maximized. He's doing 6 touchdowns in a championship game. Obviously the team that he was playing against wasn't up to match that level of play, but the system, I don't have an answer for why they are clearly so superior, especially now that the NFL, like the NCAA football is more volatile with transfer portal and all of these other things. Like, they still just maintain this stranglehold to the point where they're a dynasty. Like, the SEC is a macro dynasty, but then you've got Georgia, which is now taking the torch from Alabama, and who knows how long they're going to keep it for. But like, the consistency that they're able to demand and continue, It's incredible, like literally in every sense of the word. It's unbelievable that they're able to maintain that level of quality in the most volatile times of college football.
Your statement that Georgia has taken the reins from Alabama, David Pollard said something very similar during the telecast with Nick Saban sitting right next to him. And I'll say two things. Shout out to him for being that bold and saying it. Now, granted, Pollard is a UGA grad and, probably really believes the words that came out of his mouth, but be able to say it right in front of Nick Saban was, you got some cojones. But second, I'll say when the memes are starting to come out about the face that Nick Saban made, it made me really take a second to think, not so fast, my friend. Because Nick Saban, in down years, what we would consider this a down year, I'm not certain Alabama. I don't know if Alabama loses to Georgia. You line them up. I don't know that. And this is considered a down year. So I think Nick Saban's going to have a lot to say about it. I think he's navigated the.
They wouldn't have lost 65-7.
I know for a fact that wouldn't have happened. But I could very well see where Nick Saban would have beat that team, and Alabama would have beat that team. You look at how they played in their bowl game. I think Nick Saban's going to have a lot to say about that. So we shall see. Because it's become a big business, and the Ball Hawk Sports Talk, where sports, business, and entertainment collide. Let's deal with the other business component of it. You talked about the trade, the transfer portal, but also the other component of this big business is NIL. And this week, we got to see firsthand a proactive, innovative way. And it's not just at the Power 5 schools that are using NIL and the collective to attract some of the top talent, but it goes down to all levels of football. NIL is a part of college football now. It is here to stay. The deals are being more attractive to players. The agreements are now a little more creative. And as a marketing guru like you are, and you worked with brands, and I in business school I wrote this up and said professional athletes are going to just become sort of their own independent business cells, and brands are going to be built around them, sort of a LeBron model. And I never in a million years would have thought, again, because I'm old school, that it would trickle down to college. Now the same thing is true with college football players. Each one of these recruits, each one of these signees, each one of these athletes is a brand within itself. And each brand and each sort of business cell that is at the core and the nucleus of that brand has to figure out how to make money, has to figure out how to take advantage of NIL. And we are happy to report one of our own, straight out of New Jersey, played for East Orange Campus High School, is the featured NIL athlete of the week. Can we pull this up? Because we've all seen the meme. We've all seen the meme to the left, the young brother making that face, the pop eyes. We've all seen him used. I've used the meme several times. When somebody says something crazy to me, this is one of my go-to memes. He is now grown up to not only the state championship in high school when he was playing at East Orange Campus High, but now he has earned himself the opportunity to get an education and continue playing football. He's at a Division II school. That did not stop him from taking advantage of what is now NIL money. He shot his shot, as the young folks say, right at Popeye, and responded, and salute to this young king for now getting his NIL deal. Is this branding at its finest, ETP? This is beautiful right here. This is grassroots, organic brand building. This man got himself an NIL deal. Shout out to him as a Division II football player. What do you think about it?
I think this is good on a few different levels, right? Like as a meme, he made $0. He made no money off of all of this content that was created around his photo. I don't know whose photo it was. I don't know why they didn't get into some level of copyright or anything like that. But with memes, you can't really control it. You can't really monetize it. So it's good that he's able to take something from his past that he was obviously famous for and transition it into a commercial opportunity. For Popeyes, it's great. It'll be a good local opportunity at his, near his school. I guess Lake Erie College is where he goes to. You'll see a billboard, at some point in East Orange. One of us may drive by it. It's not too far. You spend a lot more time out there. So they're going to put one by the high school. So there's a little bit of a campaign. I think it's nothing but positive for Popeyes because I'm sure this didn't cost them a lot of money. He's not a high demand athlete. It's not a major footprint, but they're able to maximize this, something that was very organic, and they're going to get some level of marketing value out of it. And if that meme didn't exist, how many brands are going to be giving, a D2, especially a national global brand, giving a D2 lineman, an NIL deal of any kind. So I think it's found money and found value on both sides in reality. So, I love it. I love it.
This is what NIL, I think the good components of NIL, this is a reflection of it. And look, the Popeyes in East Orange, well, I shall not confirm or deny being a avid supporter of and consumer there too, but the rumor has it is that the drive-through needs a little more space so more cars can get in there, so the cars aren't just out on the road on Central Ave. That's just the rumor that I heard. I shall not confirm or deny, but maybe this will help them expand and make the drive-through such that more people can get there. But most importantly, man, it's good for I'm familiar with East Orange just because that's where I started coaching youth football. That's where my kids started playing youth football. A lot of people that mean a lot to me. Beyond just football, now I consider family members, an extended family member, are beholden and committed to East Orange. I think this is a representation of a city that is proud of its legacy for so many different things. I think this is a beautiful moment for the city, and I hope that the Popeyes there locally, the city, its residents, those who have played for East Orange, those who know this young brother, it's a reason to smile, a reason to celebrate, but also it shows you just how no matter where you're from and what your situation is, there's opportunities out there. So shout out to this young man for being proactive and seeing himself as an NIL candidate and getting that bag. Go get that bread, young king. It also reminds us of some of the other sports in college football that have taken advantage of what NIL is. One sport comes to mind that every 4 years, when you watch the Olympics, Summer Olympics, the two sports that everyone wants to watch, track and what's the other one? What do you say?
Handball.
You don't watch no handball.
Pickleball.
You watch track, or you watch either
the
track,
pickleball phenomenon.
Pickleball. It coming to an Olympics near you soon, probably. That considering pickleball courts are taking over. And I'll give three of them because Sheldon Jordan says swimming. Swimming is one. I don't watch that one as much, but a lot of people do. So we'll say track, swimming, and then the one that I think is the one that is the most amazing because I would never watch this in any other situation but for Summer Olympics. What do you think it is, ETP?
Gymnastics.
There you go. Gymnastics. We don't know anything about any of those exercises in our normal lives. But you can go to any black barber shop in America during the Summer Olympics, and we that's one of the sports that we're discussing. And I would even argue that because of the way we look at basketball now, it's kind of it's supplemental to the Summer Olympics. Those three sports, track, swimming, and the gymnastics competitions are central to the conversations. And so you reconcile that with anytime outside of the Summer Olympics, none of us talk about gymnastics. So this next NIL deal, and Shelton Jordan alludes to it, spoiler alert, but he is right on point here. The highest paid NIL woman in all of college sports reigns from LSU. She is a gymnast. And I was curious because I wanted to see how she was securing these deals. So much so that in their first meet, they're away. I think they're competing against Utah. In their first meet, there were so many fans and hecklers that she had to tweet, "Hey, we would love the support, but if you could just be very respectful of the climate of the sport and the other athletes." After the first meet, the coaches decided that they're going to ramp up the security when it comes to going to the meets and going to away games or away meets. All of this on the heels of a young lady that I didn't know her name before I read the story. If you have her Instagram page ready, ETP, because I got curious. I wanted to know what was all the fanfare about? What was the buzz about? And of course, it probably has a lot to do not with her floor routine, but she's got some really attractive pictures on her Instagram page. She's a petite, blonde, and I think blonde hair, blue-eyed young lady that is taking over the NIL world because of her beautiful pictures. And in one way, I'm like, I don't know. We talked about it. Like, is this what we want with NIL deals? Is that they are driven by a male-dominated, objectifying population of people that make it all about just, the curves and the blonde hair? But on the other, sort of another token of that is shout out to her. She has us talking about college gymnastics, which I will honestly admit I have never talked about when thinking about sports conversations. She has secured the bag and got NIL deals that, but for, her positioning her Instagram page this way, probably would have never occurred. She has made it such that no matter what happens in gymnastics, if she does ever go and compete in the Olympics or not, she's created a nest egg for herself that has given her a career beyond the college sport. I don't know what kind of deal she'll get after this, but college is supposed to be where you go lay the groundwork and the foundation of a career. And this particular lady, Olivia Dunn is her name, goes by the name Livy. I literally typed in the word Livy in Google search, and she's the first name that came up. She's got that blue check next to her name that, although while you can pay for it these days, I would imagine she didn't pay for it. She's got close to 3 million followers on Instagram and has taken that and turned it into a revenue stream. And so at the core of what NIL is, while maybe I would question if we are objectifying this young lady or not, she has put herself in position voluntarily to take advantage of what is, a revenue stream. And so I think that it is a celebration too, that indeed someone in a non-revenue generating sport in, yes, SEC, where gymnastics is big in the SEC, but you never would think it would demand this type of attention. Sold out arenas or sold out gyms to see her perform. And in this particular away meet, she wasn't even performing because of her injury, yet there were both the people there yelling her name, shouting her name. Is this a good thing when it comes to NIL and what it could generate for the athlete and for the sport itself? What say you, ETP?
It's definitely, I guess, you could say all publicity is good publicity, right? So if they're getting a lot of fanfare and demand and crowds at the
that might be the Big Flow show there with that comment. Yeah. For those of you who can't read it on the screen, a comment from Freeman, who must be the Big Flow show because of the comment, says, "I love how ETP unfollowed her before he showed us the page." caught on to that, huh? Hey, you're a
I,
genius, ETP.
I
You
gotta
ain't
cover.
committing.
I gotta cover
You ain't
my
gonna
tracks.
self-sabotage.
Listen, man, she's 20 years old. I appreciate her hustle. You know, all publicity is good publicity, as they say. I think it's good for the sport. You know, the irony of it is you have plenty of, I mean, UCLA gymnastics for years, they got on the map because they had a lot of black athletes. They were doing, routines to Beyonce and Janet Jackson and all of these others. And they're not the highest paid. They're not in the rankings in terms of what they're getting paid. You got Suni Lee, who goes to Auburn, who's an Olympic medalist, I think gold medalist, and
right.
she's not on the list. She's not at the top of the list. So I think, it's you try not to bring, race into it. And I mean, she's clearly creates the most interest with the general population that's following her in terms of young males for the most part, I'm sure, and what she's promoting, right? So she's getting good money. She's bringing more awareness to the sport. I don't see anything wrong with it. It's just what we're starting to see is the value of these athletes is actually being deprioritized or unseated in terms of their talent on the field of play or in the arena or wherever their competition exists, and more on the marketability, which
Right.
you wonder over how many years, at some point, is it going to create a deficiency in the quality of whatever sport or all sports? Because the intention and the focus, it's like, we've always talked about student athlete. The student element of student athlete is deprioritized because the value is put on the athletics. So
Right.
now if we're talking about a corporate student athlete, does the athlete portion of student athlete become second, while corporate or marketing or monetization becomes the priority, and the quality of the sports product and the performance becomes less valuable or less of a lesser quality?
And you said what she's promoting, and this is where it's challenging for me. I don't have a daughter. All right, I have a niece, sisters. Um, it's challenging for me because I don't know exactly what she is promoting, and so I will go out front and say I learned about her as we were deciding to talk about NIL, and the story came up about them needing extra security. So I am at best a novice when it comes to this particular athlete. But I will say, if the promotion is, I look through the page, it looks like she's definitely promoting beauty. She is comfortable with the fact that certain certain slices of the American population are going to respond a certain way that she poses, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's her beauty. God gave it to her; she used the way she wants to use it. I just wonder if indeed, when you look at it, and we talked about women in the NIL space and where they rank compared to other NIL opportunities, we noticed it early that it seemed to be beauty was the factor that created value in NIL. And with so many male executives making these decisions, I just wondered if not we were playing a role in objectifying young women. And as you said initially, when you were accused, it sounds like wrongly accused, of unfollowing her before you showed the Instagram page, the first thing that you said was she's a 20-year-old young lady. And for you, who is significantly older than that, and it sounds like you have looked at following her or not as morally, like, why would I want to play a part in this what could be objectified? And my man Tom Reynolds says something that is a civil rights, and please do, and I'll read it again. And we tell everyone, thank you for supporting. Please like, comment, share, tag a friend, tag a foe, tag anybody you know, and please subscribe to both the YouTube channel and the podcast. But when you do comment, we love it because I never thought of it that way. And he says not, he doesn't know if I'm seeing the full picture. It's not really a sports story. It's a civil rights story that we should discuss. I would love if you would just weigh in a little bit more about what you mean on that. And you've said in terms of race, ETP, being blonde haired, blue eyed, and beautiful by all accounts. Objectively, I will say she is a beautiful young lady. But being 20 years old, that's just not where I would spend most of my time. Now, there's a whole community of Generation Z, men and women, that probably disagree. That's how they spend their time regularly. So what is it to follow one other person that is using beauty as the core tenet of their social media? Nothing is wrong with that. And the truth of the matter is, Livy might also be projecting a message beyond just the beauty, that, your beauty is more than just what you see in these pictures. She might be also promoting, good mental health, and she might, I don't know what else she's promoting.
But I think you're right? Like whatever she's promoting, but I don't even think it's about what she's promoting. It's about what the market that is creating that interest in her is extracting, right? So she could be saying mental health or get vaccinated or, whatever messages, public service messages. But at the end of the day, we know that the driving force behind why she has the following that she has isn't because of her political views. It isn't because of her sports performance. It's because she has taken advantage of this platform and she's putting out content that resonates with a large enough population that is basically looking at it from a position of like sexuality, right? And that's the piece, regardless of her intention, because that's fine, right? I don't think she's doing anything where she's not selling porn or she's not doing it. Regardless, whatever she's doing, she's comfortable with it. That's her brand. That's what she's putting out. But it's being received in a way where you have people that probably have no interest in gymnastics whatsoever becoming a fan of whatever she's doing just because of the suggestive nature or the sexiness of her content and all of that, which is fine for her, which is fine for them. But I think, it opens up, like when we talk about civil rights and we talk about equality and all of these things, like we talk about the WNBA a lot, right? And so I'll just kind of make a quick point about that, where the generally accepted, mass population accepted standard of beauty of women or just female celebrity does not live in the NBA. There's a lot of black players. That's not always the most generally accepted. There's a lot of LGBTQ plus community members that represent the league. That's not widely accepted. So from a marketability standpoint, you're not getting that value. It's not because the product of the sport is not quality. It's because the marketability based on who is being marketed to and who the U.S. consumer population is doesn't. They want sex sells. They want sex, and their standard of beauty is representative of people like Olivia Dunn and not like Asia Wilson or even maybe Simone Biles or any of these, where they don't get the level of following and awareness and support that somebody does who's a white female, blonde hair, blue eyes, that matches the traditional standard of American beauty.
Yeah, we talked about it back in the day when you looked at the two side by side. Was what's the one tennis player, the blonde who she and Serena never got along? Sharapova. But she was the marketing and branding darling when it came to income. She was getting paid, not winning tournaments. She was getting paid because of the standard in which you talk about, that she fits so beautifully into this standard or she fit so neatly into the standard of what beauty was in American and was Eurocentric standard. So her being as blonde, blue-eyed European as you could imagine was making more money outside of tennis from marketing opportunities, yet having an absolute horrible record when it came to wins and losses compared to Serena says exactly what you're saying. And now seeing it in the college ranks, though, it feels weird. It feels weird. I guess that's the best way to say it. And, you know, you didn't really say it this way, but if we're being honest, when you pointed out initially, like, no, I'm not following her because she's a 20-year-old young woman, feels kind of creepy. That there's just so much fanfare and money going to a young lady that's 20 years old that, you know, and they said that they're going to up the security. It's just, you know, and the Big Flow show talked about, you know, it's her decision and she's doing it voluntarily. Yes. But I hope that the objectification of young women doesn't become the real foundation of the NIL deals, because, you know, there's the safety component of it, and the LSU coaches already acknowledged that they've got to up the security. But in reality, it just doesn't feel right, because 20-year-old young ladies, you're right, it volunteering to do it. She's an adult, but it just doesn't feel right. And I don't know how to say other than shout out to her for taking advantage of the platform and turning it into a few deals and making money that she can live off for the rest of her life. I just hope it doesn't become the norm, because, you know, when I thought of NIL initially, this is not where I thought we were going. I thought we were going to, like, our story of the Division II football player that found through the localization of you know, not only his area in East Orange, but the localization of that meme being specific to Popeyes. I thought those were going to be the deals that we would be looking at, like, ah, man, they figured out, or what's the young man's name? I can't remember his name. The coldest getting the you know, the coldest from Nebraska getting the deal with the
that heating and cooling company.
Yeah, I was like, that's what I thought it was going to be, and I don't want to turn it to think it might be the new digital version of, you know, Playboy and Hustler, essentially, right? Without nudity, it feels ultimately like it degrades the sport. And you said whether or not the quality of the athlete is going to now be degraded as well. And we are at that point. Does art imitate life? Does life imitate art? We're sort of at that crossroads when it comes to if being beautiful and blonde in the SEC is more valuable than doing an amazing floor routine at UCLA. It says something. And I know that, you know, when we think of it, not just from an NIL standpoint, but, you know, you talked about Naomi Osaka. Naomi Osaka now in the prime of her career. You gave me some information about her. Go ahead and share it with the rest of the Ball Hawk Sports Talk world. Naomi Osaka now, give me the new update on her.
So Naomi Osaka is officially, there was questions about why she was withdrawn from the Australian Open. She didn't go to any of the, like, warm-up or the tune-up events prior to the Australian Open. There was all this speculation of what was going on. She was delisted from the Australian Open, and then just a few days ago, she announced that she's indeed pregnant. So she's kind of taking on this opportunity, this timing. You know, she's at a general, you know, I guess, comfortable age to have a baby, right? Like average age, you know, there's nothing outside the norm for a 25-year-old to be having their first child in general. But obviously unique for an elite athlete in their sport to essentially take that time at a point
during their prime. And I'll say this, and I posted another comment from Tom Reynolds, who's still alluding to, and we appreciate it, the Olivia Dunn story, Livy as she is called. We appreciate you guys weighing in, and Tom's son, I'm comfortable saying this because we recognized it on the show, was one of the young men that was at Michigan and very active with the relationship between the NCAA and its players, and trying to figure out, what protections should be in place for the players. And so it took a very active role, I think, at the outset of COVID. But I also know when there were discussions about unionization of players, he was within those conversations as well. So shout out to you, Tom, for making sure that your son is a chip off the old block, in the sense that being an activist in the space. And it just seems as though, in the Livy story, and we'll move on from it, so many amazing athletes doing things on campuses, and taking active roles and leadership roles that I would hope that we would, if not equally, because sex does sell, at least in some capacity, that there are opportunities for those young people too. Because if beauty is the only thing that's going to create a check, it limits it, especially when the standard of beauty in America has been one for so long. But to your point, Naomi Osaka, in the middle of her career, 25 years old, deciding to go and not deciding, choosing with her partner to get pregnant, is a 2-year pause in her career. You compare that to Serena, that waited, and sort of had to wait. And I think this is sort of the culmination of where we're going with it, where the dollars and opportunities outside the sport and the definition of who you are, because Naomi Osaka, at one point, I would argue, was just as much an activist as she was an athlete. It's a new world where athletics is, from an important standpoint to each one of the athletes, athletics is, it's not universal anymore. And right, the sport is something that I do, it's not who I am. And that is what you wanted it in principle, of making sure that the student athletes understood that the sport was something that they did. It's the engagement academically that leads you to a career and helps you thrive in who you are. And the sport just happened to be the way that you did it. And now you're seeing it in the pro ranks, because it was unheard of in their career with the legacies on the line. Because for those 2 years, let's just say, or 18 months, let's call it 18 months, where she probably won't be at her those are tournament matches that she can't win. And I guess for this generation, Generation Z, legacy in the sports context is a lot less important than other things. To a degree, that should be celebrated. But just like you, I question whether or not that means that the overall quality and focus on the sport itself also is in jeopardy. Shout out to her partner and their blessing of a baby. But we shall see what this means in the grand scheme of things when it comes to sports. I'll give you last word on it, man, before we take it home for the day, because we're going to give NBA updates quickly and we're going to get out of here.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just, because she's able to monetize her brand, and she has become more of a brand, or she has expanded her brand beyond more than just being an athlete. She has an agency. She has a ton of endorsements. She's maximized her celebrity. So it gives her the opportunity and the freedom to do this. As a fan, it leaves something to be desired, because our players and athletes going to start to be less invested in the performance. And ultimately, are we going to see a degraded product? And especially to your point, is now that it's permeated the college ranks, there's no, arguably there's no more purity in sports, which is probably the last frontier. College sports was, high school was the real last frontier, but even high school athletes are getting NIL deals. So I don't know. I just hope that sports still stays competitive. I hope that people are still, have the eye of the tiger, and they have the drive to compete, versus just looking at it as a financial opportunity to make money. And once they get the money that they can make, they can walk away. Even, Luka Doncic, we're going to talk in the NBA. He was asked about breaking LeBron's scoring record, and he scoffed at it, because he said, I'm not going to play that long. I'd rather just be on my farm in Slovenia at that
Right.
point. I'm not going to play 20 years because he doesn't have to, right? The money, he's earned the money. Not to say that he should want to play till he's 40 or what have you, but just the mentality of I'm doing this for as long as I want to do it, where, you know, people like a Tom Brady have this, you know, this undying passion for the game that makes it exciting for the fans to watch,
Right.
albeit crazy.
Yeah, that whole saying, and I'll mess it up, so I won't say it, but like hard times, make strong men. And I'm saying men universal, mankind, we should say, or let's say hard times make strong people. And strong people make good times make weak people, right? Like that whole saying might be true here when it comes to sports. Because if you think about it, you know, Luka's right on point. Well, I ain't got to play that long. I mean, Generation Z is at a point when it comes to sports where they don't have to. They have options because of all of the revenue streams outside of the sport. For all the sacrifices that were made, such that contracts are guaranteed in most sports except football. I don't want to say good times. These are the good times that they are basking in that are going to naturally create weak people. But you understand that if I ask someone in the 80s in the NBA, if you had an option to maintain the same level of notoriety, and the other option was you got to compete and be the you don't hold on to one of them. It feels like most people would be like, man, give me I don't care. Nobody had to know my name. I was out there for the fight, the dog, the competition. It just feels like in this Generation Z, the focus is so much more on the other stuff. Like, I don't know that Generation Z would say that. I think Generation Z, and I'm not going to make it about generations. I'll just say some of the current athletes, millennials, Generation Z, whatever you want to call them. Current athletes seem to really love the other stuff, the fanfare, and the sport and the competition is second nature or secondary to the other stuff. And just basing on like little things like, they really, really exchange jerseys now. Like they love each other, and like having someone's jersey means something to them. And it just seems different. We'll just leave it there. Seems different.
Yeah. Well,
Quick
I think
NBA.
the last.
Go ahead.
Sorry, just the class. So
you go.
the one thing, because Tom Reynolds has been asking some good questions or making some good statements. No one questions if professional athletes are committed to the sport if they sign an endorsement deal. Why would we do it for collegiate athletes? For me, I think my answer is they are not beholden to the college, right? They're not being compensated by the college holistically, right? They do not earn a salary. Yes, they have a scholarship, but it's not in comparison to the deals that they're getting outside of the university. Whereas in the NBA or any other, league, the compensation for playing the sport generally is on par, if not far outweighs what you're making off the field or off the court, unless you're in like the rare air of, a Serena Williams, a Naomi Osaka, LeBron James, Tom Brady, etc. But I think that's a clear distinction.
Yeah, and I think, and I'll answer it a little differently, and I'll just say like this is that once you get to the professional ranks, I think that the gloves are off, and you understand that it is a business purely. I am a bit naive, I think, because I still think that college sports, whether they are or not, to be debated, I'm naive enough to think that they should be. They should be where young people go to enjoy the last fruits of their labor when it comes to the sports, and then grow into the young adults that they want to be. And I think that young people are put in air quotes, right? Because we said Stetson Bennett's a 25-year-old man, but when it comes to some of these decisions, and I'll just talk about me. I wasn't prepared for make some of these decisions that would be lasting and that could impact what my career, what my life would be afterwards. And so there are agents that are helping these NIL young athletes, and I hope that they're doing right by them. But with no regulation whatsoever, and with a lot of the agencies popping up with people that you know just woke up one day and decided they wanted to be in the business, I just worry that we're putting young people in harm's way. And again, I'm naive in that way, but I NBA quickly, man. Let's get out of here because Luka. You talked about Luka. Luka was able to outlast LeBron last night in a double overtime game with an amazing triple double stat line. And those two together put in this weird dynamic of you're looking at what is probably the future of the NBA in the Luka and all the international athletes versus the present and some would argue the past, recent past of LeBron now needing to pass the torch. It was fun to watch. We'll see what happens. Luka and the Mavs are playing very well. The Lakers were doing well when AD was healthy, and that's always an asterisk next to that because he's often hurt. The second round of the All-Star ballots came in, so the NBA is going to have a very interesting decision to make. There's going to be potentially an NBA MVP candidate that might not start in the NBA All-Star game. That's where they're at now with the voting, but it does show the parity in the NBA, man. The Nets lost last night to the Celtics. The Celtics then, by winning, took charge or took lead of the Eastern Conference, but it was a great game until the fourth quarter. And I'll say this because both had to play without a star. The Celtics without Jaylen Brown, the Nets without KD. We saw last year when the Nets had to play without KD for an extended time. They almost reversed course in their whole season. We'll see what happens. They say KD is going to be out at least several weeks with the knee injury, a knee bruise, the MCL. So all of the work that they did to get to this point. And my man, Ben Simmons, finished the game with, I think, 9 rebounds, 13 assists, but he had a whopping 0 points. I don't think they can win without Ben Simmons at least scoring some points. So it should be fun to watch, man. Those are the hot stories in the NBA. Nothing really to talk about here until NBA All-Star Week. That's when we really get into talking about it. This particular episode was on Friday the 13th. We call it Black Friday the 13th, but for several reasons. If you didn't hear it in the beginning, please go back and listen. But it had a lot to do with the NFL coaching carousel. And love it. Fired after 1 year on the heels of David Culley being fired after 1 year. And so the Texans also wrapped into sort of the scandal of Deshaun Watson and being mentioned in conversations when it came to Brian Flores. And you think of Friday the 13th and people talking about it being bad luck. And this week and that Monday being referred to as Black Monday on the heels of the end of the NFL season and NFL coaches being fired. We named this show very specifically because it feels as though at time in this America and certain spaces, especially the NFL, just being black has its own version of bad luck. And the only way that we will correct that is that we decide to point it out when it doesn't seem right, to point it out when it doesn't smell right, and to do right by people. And mentioning it in ways that we can advance from it. Shout out to Mike Tomlin for holding on to yet another year of making sure it's not a losing season. That makes 16 seasons. And so on both ends of that spectrum, we have black men that we're discussing in the NFL coaching ranks. And we contrast those to other stories, the Sean McVay's and Sean Payton stories, but even the Jeff Saturday story, and it leaves you scratching your head. So I say to you, because I'm still one of the avid supporters and lovers of the NFL, it's up to us to make these things important and have these conversations. And so we did that today. We have my man ATP in the building. The Big Flow Show was out and about, but still chiming in by way of the comments. Thank you to each and every one of you that weighed in one way or another, that spent their time here with us on the Ball Hog Sports Talk. We ask you, like we do every week, humbly, we ask you to like, comment, share, tag a friend, tag a foe, tag anybody that you know, and please subscribe to both podcasts. ETP was in the building. The Big Flow Show was here remotely. I am your boy, B Brown, ESQ, a.k.a. the Ball Hog, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, a.k.a. Mr. Excessive Celebration, a.k.a. Brazy. This has been the Ball Talk, where sports, business, and entertainment collides. And with that, we is out. Peace.